This is one of the more fun parts of Tech Field Day for the new folks who haven't, who in here has never done a roundtable before? All right. How this works is this is one of those things that we started doing way back for the very first Tech Field Day. And essentially the idea is to give you guys a chance to talk amongst yourselves instead of just being the audience. To listen, to talk about what you've heard and about other topics that you want to cover. So we're going to do a series of discussions here about the various things that we've heard, the various companies that presented, as well as some other topics that some folks wanted to cover. So, hey Tom, do you want to do the presentations from today?
Sure.
Tom was keen in organizing this, so here, why don't you come on up and introduce, you want to start with Cisco?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So we saw quite a few great presentations today. Everyone at the table was very interactive, lots of great discussions. I didn't have to edit any of you out of the videos, so that's always a plus. Let's start with the first presentation we saw bright and early this morning with Cisco. They had a couple of different topics that we discussed. The first one was about Cmx Cloud, which is a product I first got to see at Tech Field Day Extra at Cisco Live Berlin. Who has some thoughts on Cmx Cloud?
I loved it. I thought it was great to see them entering that space. I'm not, you guys are on the table now. I'm not really necessarily a Cisco person. I'm not a Cisco VAR. I don't sell the product. I service it and work with it, but I don't get a lot of the Kool-Aid all the time. And so it was interesting to see it. I hadn't seen their entry into that market, so I think it's really cool. I like what they're doing with it. I'd love to see the price point come down to make it a little bit more accessible. But overall, I think it's a great addition to the product line. Happy to know that it works with Mobility Express too, that they didn't leave that out, and that they'll talk directly to the cloud, which makes the deployments even easier to work with for ME. But I really liked it. I thought it was a great looking product.
Anyone else?
I'll go.
All right.
Working in higher ed, I couldn't quite, with the cost, see us really looking into it further, just because with over 7,000 APs, that's quite a big investment. And I didn't really see any good use cases for the education side, but I do think maybe there is something valuable there to really look at and see, where are people congregating, where are they hanging out mostly, and somehow tying that back in with how a school communicates with everyone via Wi-Fi. But I would say, yeah, the price point needs some tuning.
Do you feel that if Cisco does something that they did similar to maybe with UCS, where they drive the price down to an adoption rate, and they give, basically, I won't say give it away, but they give you a deep discount for the purpose of putting it into an organization to get the data that you're thinking may not be as useful today? Do you think that would help drive adoption for education providers that are not sure where this is going?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Just depends on, who's going to be the driving force on the campus side as far as what it's going to be used for.
Sam, you have some thoughts?
Yeah, and if I may, there's working for a Cisco VAR, I have a slightly different take on especially pricing around Cisco products, and I think there's probably two important things to say. One is if pricing is a barrier to entry, you should be having that conversation with your Cisco account manager and your partner account manager, because invariably they can work with you to find out what that price should be. And I've seen them move mountains in order to seed products into environments. That's sort of topic number one. Topic two, without sounding like a Cisco shill,
So you do that?
I sound like a Cisco shill. The Cisco One pricing licensing program is intended to help alleviate those burdens, and it's a much longer conversation. Again, you should be having with your Cisco account manager and VAR, but sort of the point of those large licensing programs is to remove that large-scale burden and cost around licensing. And it's sort of unfortunate because we don't get exposed to that because it's not really a product-centric thing. But there's absolutely things that you should be engaging with your VAR and your Cisco AM on to address those pricing concerns in particular.
And there was not only. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it looks like the pricing is they started in the retail area where the analytics turns into cash.
Right.
So because there's a cash on one end, they wanted to get a piece of that other end. For a lot of situations, there's no financial
ROI.
benefit to have an ROI, so the R just isn't going to happen.
Agreed.
But on this, I mean, historically, CMX has been around for a while, and you're not going to demo it because it's difficult to set up, get working, integrate into your infrastructure. But now you get a free trial for a cloud-based solution. You can plug it in and just go and see if that data is going to be usable.
No barrier to entry.
Yeah, I mean, it literally takes a couple minutes to set it up. I've set this up before. It's very quick. The hard part is going to be getting the right people involved in your vertical. In higher education, I have used, I used to work in higher ed, and I have used the precursor to CMX, just plain MSC location services, and it was valuable for things like knowing student flows, where they congregated, where we needed to adapt the network to meet those needs. But now it's going to be much easier for you to do that because it's a cloud solution that you just point and click and it goes.
And a quick note, I mean, just working with some of the other manufacturers that are out there, this is still, I do want to give Cisco credit on this. It's about a third of the pricing of some of the competitors that are out there. So it's nice to see that the price is coming down on it. I think that's it's encouraging to see that it's coming down. I mean, by a significant rate. So we'll see where it is.
Well, compare that to the cost of the solution you're using it for. If it's an app development solution where you're talking about integrating into a student system or into a loyalty system, the cost of the app development tends to be far more burdensome than the cost of the CMX product. I think as a component to an overall solution, it's actually probably priced right where it needs to be.
Yeah, Eddie?
I think.
Well, as someone who's really not that familiar with the Cisco product line, I know several of you here are. So I was still trying to figure out just this morning what CMX offers. It seems to be, at least from what the slides that I saw, was geared more towards retail, like Keith was saying, because you can get ROI from that kind of information. It makes sense. Whereas in other areas it may not, like education. But he also mentioned that there is some difference between the cloud version and I guess the current version of CMX. Since I'm not familiar with, what's the difference? Where's that? What's the whole purpose of CMX? What does it do? And then what does the cloud do? But it leaves out something. What's that piece? I don't know what that is.
The big piece that they didn't have in the cloud today is location analytics. Actually, location.
Location.
So
does that include BLE or is it strictly on the wireless?
that's a tough question. But like today, your classic MSE where I want to track clients in real time, that's not in the cloud today. The other piece is I want to do analytics where people are walking from and to. Today it's presence analytics. So when people are, what their dwell times are, what zone, how much time did they spend? Did we bring them into the store or not? So it is very, I would say it's more retail focused. When you start talking about the on-premises version of CMX, we have, real-time location. I can tell which client is where at any given point in time, and I can start figuring out, heat maps of where people are during different parts of the day, where they went from.
When he said that's changing, right? He said the full version's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah, they said it's coming. So, but today, what they're shipping is just presence.
Andrew, you had something to add?
Yeah, let's also remember the broader context of what solution this fills, especially for retailers, which is their initial target market. There's other solutions besides Wi-Fi out there in that market, like video analytics and other competitors out there that potentially are much higher priced, doing some combination of technologies. And so coming from a retailer perspective that are evaluating all of these technologies and what fits and what doesn't, gives them the best ROI and the best business intelligence. You could even go down and say that the presence analytics are replacing people during holiday shopping season with a clicker at the doors. So looking at it from that broader context, I think, the presence analytics and the CMX types of solutions have their place. It's still maturing as a technology and as a solution set. I think moving it to the cloud is a great thing to get early adoptants or at least evaluations from more customers out there, as well as then for those customers who don't really want to take it on in-house to manage it. It could be a great solution. It's always the trade-off between cloud versus on-premises, right? Mm-hmm. So some organizations, maybe like universities, see the better ROI or a lower expense overall because they don't drive sales from it. by doing it on premises for a large institution, whereas maybe some smaller customers that just can't afford the staff or something to do it on premises, that they can get up and running real quickly with a cloud solution.
Can I jump in on you real quick just to pull a question from Twitter? You mind? You can go ahead. It has to do exactly with what you're talking about.
Yeah, have at it.
So Omar came in on Twitter and he said, CMX Cloud is awesome, but I see a huge disconnection between licensing cost structure and the Mobility Express message. And it's interesting to me because, at the last field day that we did, they pushed Mobility Express really, really well. They talked about moving away from licensing, moving away from, having to do all these different things and focus on small little areas where, like small retail where you deploy 3 to 5 APs. And it seems like this does kind of counteract that. So I wanted to bring that up.
Well, the integration with Mobility Express there isn't that, it's not counteracting that conversation. In fact, I think having Mobility Express being able to do it allows the smaller retailers access to big data analytics
But
that
still
the big guys are getting.
Well, and they're looking to compete with those big guys.
Right.
Yeah.
They're able to get that information now without needing a whole infrastructure to do it. They have everything they need. Mobility Express and then CMX in the cloud.
I want to get Lee's thoughts on this.
So 3 quick thoughts. Wi-Fi access, and this sort of thing, it's just amazing how it just kind of oozes. One thing blends into another and another and another, and pretty soon, us people doing Wi-Fi are now doing all of these things. People expect us to be able to do them. So that in itself is kind of noteworthy. As these things get more complicated, boy, it would be nice if there was some kind of targeted training by Cisco as these things get more and more complex, other than just here's a how-to white paper that, to Devin's point about RRM and the complexity. Some of these things are getting hyper complex. To just say, new feature, here's how you do it, and it's just like two-dimensional in text. I don't know how you overcome that, but it is getting complicated. And then the third thought I had is, for me, being a Cisco customer, and I hate to sound mean-spirited, but I will, the more they layer on what I see is just chronically flawed code, it really makes me uncomfortable to want to do some of these things, because they got to get their basic QA up on a lot of the other things before I'm even tempted to say, gee, let me spend more money on yet something else that's going to give me all kinds of new places for bulk.
That's an industry
merge.
problem, though. I mean, every major wireless LAN infrastructure manufacturer has that same problem. I'll be honest, you go down the list, every last one of them has a list of caveats and exceptions and resolved issues in the latest version of code that's longer than my leg.
I will fairly admit that it's the devil I know, but it's just chronic and pervasive, and that's where I'm coming from.
And to repeat some things that you've said over the years, Lee, you don't like the maintaining and ownership of some of those big boxes on premises. You've been very vocal in the past. If I could just get somebody to take Prime and put it in the cloud and do all my patching and fixing and those types of things, that you would jump at the chance. And having gone through a lot of the beta stuff with some of this from 10.0 to 10.1 to 10.2, there's some attractiveness to that to me, of just saying, hey, make it somebody else's problem. You can patch CMX every time it comes out, and I'll just sit back and consume the analytics out of it. That, to me, that is kind of fun.
Yeah, I think you all bring up interesting points, that it's an emerging technology and there's a lot of interesting use cases for it, but Cisco still has to battle some of the demons they've had for years: software quality and licensing costs. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where this product goes, considering it's only about 3 months old right now. I want to shift gears real quick. We talked about software, and everybody knows that software is boring. Hardware is awesome. So let's talk a little bit about hardware. I'd like to get your thoughts on the industrial access point. And I'd like to get your thoughts on Jim Florwick's presentation about the radio management in the 3800 and 2800. However, I want 1 minute thoughts. And I'm going to start with you, Steve McKim, because you haven't said anything yet.
I have not. Like Eddie said, I'm very unfamiliar with Cisco's product line. So for the CMX, I was just trying to learn a little bit. I didn't have a lot to say there. For the IW3702, that temperature range is, it's pretty good. I live in Canada. I've actually been working on a project where I need something that's going to sit in an outdoor enclosure in the winter. And, it's hard to find something that's going to work down to -40. I thought the working underwater for up to 1 hour, that was interesting. I've never seen that in an access point before. I was more interested with Jim Florrick's presentation when they talked about the the algorithm that they use to determine when the XOR radio switches from 2.4 to 5 gigahertz and the percentage, redundant radio identification. I was very interested in that, the diversity that they're using, gain diversity, polarity diversity, channel diversity, and power diversity. I think there's a lot of potential there for many applications.
Cool. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this?
Real quick on the IW3700 IoT or industrial access point. I think it's very cool. I've done some work in some industrial environments and can definitely see the need for those types of solutions. I think it's really cool that they tested wireless worker bridging roaming up to 100 miles per hour. Yeah. I would like to see some of that testing because that sounds really freaking cool if it actually works. And the resilient mesh and all the industrial rating that goes into that is pretty cool. On the 2800, 3800 AP and the dual 5 gigahertz XOR radio stuff, very interested to hear about that. I've thought that not fully software-defined radios, but this flexible radio assignment concept was coming down the pipe for a while. It's good to see it come to fruition. I think it's going to really help with capacity. I was very interested in the isolation between the radios for interference reasons. Got a lot of good information from Jim Florrick and Wes Purvis on that regard. So really looking forward to seeing more testing coming out of that. They did some throughput testing, but I want to see some more of the retry rates and things like that. I thought one thing that was really cool about it as well was how they implemented the two radios that are completely co-located with the micro macro cell and the 11V kind of triggering or trying to push clients into one radio or the other with the two different cell sizes of keep high clients in a micro or highest in our clients in a micro cell and the ones that are a little bit further out in a macro cell as the differentiation between which radio they should attach to. I think that was pretty clever and I like to see that in action. So.
Cool. Ryan, what was big for you?
I was pretty blown away by the IW3700, the industrial access point. That thing, the temperature range on it, everything that went into manufacturing something like that, with the ratings of the environment that it could handle, and like you said, the 100-mile-an-hour roaming. I would love to see that in action. It's one of those things. It's difficult to believe, and I don't not believe it, but high-speed roaming is such a difficult thing to do.
I want to see it.
I want to see it. Right, yeah. I mean, Cisco is one of the companies a few wireless field days ago that they showed us AC live first. Maybe we can have another session on a train with them because I want to see it.
Hey, there's trains here, man.
Yeah. I have a really simple question about 100-mile-an-hour roaming. In what situation would you roam at 100 miles an hour?
Stop car during the middle of a chase.
Ride control?
Helicopters in South Texas for a hurricane.
But there would be enough access points that you could theoretically establish a connection and perform work
Think of
at
a
100 miles an hour?
That's what we're supposed to do.
municipal setup with police cars on a
Those are
chase.
the job requirements.
Well, look at ride control. Look at vehicle control for amusement park rides.
And I think
Okay, I can see that
they go
one.
over 100 miles
Because I can see that one because it's enclosed.
Well, they wouldn't go over 100, but they were tested up too.
Pretty fast to that.
They go pretty
even,
damn fast.
even in mining, just moving a haul truck, it's not 100 miles an hour, but if you can over-engineer it, but you need to have constant roaming because they're all autonomously driven now.
I think trains are probably the biggest, though. When it sounds like, or subways.
It's the easiest to envision, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, mass trend.
That's on the temperature, it's interesting. I've worked on a couple different projects. I'm pulling.
You haven't been called on.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. He's using his time right now.
Just saying. A lot of these other APs that are out there, they do plus 60, plus 65. So for Cisco to go to plus 70, I mean, you're talking the difference of it's like from 140 to 150. If it's 140, you know what I mean? It's the temperature wasn't that big of a differentiator for me with this product. I think The M12 connector was a pretty big differentiator.
Well, I mean, it was a cold start at negative 40 degrees.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I think the cold side, I guess, is more than on the heat side of it.
And 70 degrees Celsius, that's pretty hot.
Yeah.
For a non-vented, fanless,
In
sealed enclosed.
Yeah, like in a
there are
mine
plenty
or
that
big
operate
enough.
at high temperature, and there are plenty that operate in difficult environments with debris and smoke and all of that stuff.
Well, think about,
Show me more than a handful that do both. A sealed enclosure is very difficult to do.
Well, I mean, there's been Class 1 Div 1 and Class 1 Div 2 devices for years that can do that. I mean,
right, but there's very few of them out there, especially when you're talking about a high performance access point.
in 802.11ac, you're right. But in older, even in end products, you could find C1D1 and C1D2 products that are pretty easy to get. Now, granted, they're expensive, but they're pretty easy to get a hold of. I think, on the Cisco side, the flexible radio architecture was really cool to be able to see that. I think it all came home when you can talk about bits and bytes all day, but when it's you having to get a ladder and an access point and a spool of cable and run down a hallway to deploy another AP in the middle of a convention, I think that's where it made the most sense to me. Where that's something that solves a real issue that happens, while it's there. So
I'm going to open it up real quick. Does anybody else have any last thoughts on this? Anything that they love to share? Sam and
I do. The industrial stuff in particular has always been interesting because they're pushing the envelope beyond what sort of the regular guys are doing. I'd like to see them push the envelope even more. I'd like to see things like being able to take both radios inside of an AP and have both of them attached to infrastructure, and then be able to do things like PRP between two radio links, and so you get redundant connectivity using both assets and an access point, and then being able to use both uplinks to multiple switches. I'd like to see that become a more integral piece, but I think you have to have the hardware first. To your point, is hardware is awesome and that's fun to talk about, but I hope to see more of those IoT innovations being driven down into the products.
Cool. Keith?
But just to go on with what Sam said, but what I liked about it was they started with the base 3700. All the features, he just
started there.
3702, anything you have, we got that. Plus then we did this other thing to it. On Jim's talk, love it. It's like listening to Chuck talk. I can listen to Jim all day. What I would like to have seen was, or if at least a report, he just hinted at a couple of pieces of information he got off of Mobile World Congress. That set of data of a real world with their gear could be valuable for all of us to learn from. And I just feel like I got a tease. I want more.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because I want to make sure we cover everybody that got a chance to present today, because one of the companies was very special because they peeked around the corner of stealth mode and said, we're going to talk to one of the most technically advanced panels in Silicon Valley this week. And that was Nyansa, the secret company that was founded by some people that seem to have some cloud Wi-Fi experience. And they brought on some of our friends from Tech Field Day, GT Hill and David Kalish, formerly of Ruckus Wireless, but now they are full-fledged Nyansa folks. And analytics. I think I'm required to say IoT and analytics and big data at every tech thing that goes on. Who has some great thoughts about Nyansa? Just real quick, you've got some good opinions, I know.
This is, so I mean, we've seen the management platforms for all the different systems out there. Everyone has their own NMS. There are third-party NMSs. I don't think that any of them are gathering as complete and mined data set as Nyansa is. It's presented very easily, but the algorithms that are going behind this must be massively engineered. The amount of data that they're getting out of the same information that we've been getting through SNMP and screen scraping for years, they're putting it together into, frankly, some really easy to use reports that I'm angry I haven't written myself.
Andrew.
Really quick thought. So one of the big problems in the wireless industry has been the expertise required to troubleshoot wireless networks. It's not trivial, very complex. And you look at existing network management systems, and what's always been missing is the good visibility and reporting to easily diagnose, report, and fix problems. And this is kind of where I see Niance's sweet spot is we come in, we auto-diagnose, crunching all of this data through advanced statistical modeling and tell you what your baseline is, when you deviate from that baseline, and when you have issues, and exactly narrow the scope of a problem very quickly and help you identify what the cause of a problem, the root cause of a problem was very quickly, for people who aren't necessarily Wi-Fi experts.
But it's not just wireless either. It's wired side also, which usually you don't have that correlation. Sorry,
Our friend has something he wants to say back here.
It makes me want more, though. It makes me want more when you look at the likes of the 7 Signals of the world that are KPIs and baseline performance, and they're doing all of that automatic baselining and fingerprinting and then deviations from as you make changes. It just makes me wonder, sort of, we see pieces of 2 really great solutions, and if they were mashed together, it'd be like everything. If you were looking at the RF in addition to the packet layer, in addition to what the controller is telling you, all 3 of those things together seems like sort of the perfect, it seems like perfection. I want more.
Well, how many times do we say that in the industry of these 2 solutions
should get together. Right. Yeah.
But we're looking at, pre-version 1.0.
But I think it all goes to
And they even said, we've been working on the back end.
Yeah.
Now we're going to start working on the front end, gaining a customer base, and adding features.
Yep.
So
it's validating Lee's theory, his napkin, is what I think.
Yeah.
When you tweeted that out, I saw it and I go, that's exactly it.
Yeah, they're trying to exonerate the wireless network. I've had a lot of conversations with them. I've got an article coming out for network computing based on a bunch of interviews with them, and that's what they're exonerating the wireless and finding problems with it, but most of the problems are not going to be with the wireless. But the challenge I see for them trying to market it is it's just kind of the same thing as with 7 Signal. What have I already bought when I get something like Prime Infrastructure, and I bought Clean Air, and I bought other things? What do I already have? Now introduce this. Where's the overlap? Is the delta between what I already have and what they promise enough to make it compelling? And how do I explain to my manager that the last thing I bought that I had him spend money on, maybe it doesn't do it good enough, so now let's add yet another tool in. And they ask, well, what about the last tool that we bought? What is, how does this differentiate itself from those?
I think I have an answer for your question. One of the things I see, and if you just look forward, think if they have more data collectors around. The real value is that they could offset one of 2 things, and maybe both. One, you will know before you upgrade to 8.7.3 that 17 other people who are like you did, and it failed.
Yeah, that's
That alone is just a little CYA. The second is, because you had that much analytics on everyone, I see them replacing Gartner with, instead of what people want, with analytical data that said X solution, Y solution. Here is 25,000 APs versus 25,000 APs. Here is our net, even down to the retry rate on X AP versus Y AP.
Yeah, but how much of that is poor implementation could be driving any vendor into the ground,
But if
right?
you do it across
it's a double-edged sword.
a wide enough data
Until
set,
you get into
that
the
average
millions.
will.
And the
see.
statistics come out, yes, on a small scale, but when you take 25, 10,000 AP installs, you got to figure they're pretty much installed the same.
And won't you be able to tell if it's a bad installation
see
because
one.
the infrastructure will be all green while access point beyond?
Well, again, assuming your measurements like CU are baselined and identical between vendors, yeah, unfortunately they're not.
Eddie, what are your thoughts on this? I want to hear what you have to say.
No, I mean, like everybody else, I think we were definitely very impressed, and there were some similarities to some other products that we've seen that are out there. But I mean, I think that the magic sauce, if you will, of what Niance is doing is being able to correlate the data across such a wide data set. It isn't just like what my building or what my campus or all my stores are doing. It's what other people are doing all over the place. And to what Sam was saying, how do you know it's installed right? Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? When you get a database that large, you get that mean where you can actually kind of start saying, okay, well, I see where we should be, and we're not in that area. And I think that's what the real power of what Niantic is. I mean, I would also like to delve into it more deeply and see what. I mean, they gave us a few examples, right? This device did DHCP and it did a DNS query, but it was looking for a different DNS server. So that was one example of how you could troubleshoot. I would love to go deeper and find out, what other things can it tell me, but that correlation between what's on the wire and what's in the air, and kind of put those two things together. I mean, that's really powerful. And
from a managed service provider role too, I think this, that's a conversation I had with them, off camera. I totally see Lee's point where you buy the best thing, and then you have to add the best thing, then you have to add the best thing. At some point, it probably gets kind of old, but being able to do this from an MSP play, I talked a little bit about, one of my customers that I have and what I'd like to do for them. There's definitely an opportunity there at a much larger scale for a managed service provider to walk in and say, look, I'm gonna put these sensors out on your network. I'm gonna put these collectors out on your network, and I can turn around and I can troubleshoot it remotely and find out what's going on with you. I think the opportunity for them is just enormous.
And I think and the data you're getting is more truthful, right? So to Keith's point, where he was saying, we could, I mean, really, the whole Gartner thing, right? It has really nothing to do with data points other than do you do wired and wireless? Oh, you're magical, right? Whereas with Niantic, you're actually going to find out so and so AP from this manufacturer compares to this AP from this manufacturer in a wide data set, and you can actually get real comparables. Real comparables that aren't based on marketing fluff. They're based on actual world use.
And if you can drive the vendors to focus on that, all the better.
Yeah, no, really.
Very helpful.
Well, I think
They can't fudge the numbers.
I think Niantic really has some good potential, and I think that I'm excited to see exactly what they're going to be all about on Monday, April the 18th, 2016. And if you happen to be watching this video after that date, make sure to go over to Niantic.com and check out what they're doing. All right, I'm gonna close this out by talking about the presentation we just finished watching from Ventev, first-time Mobility Field Day presenters. It's always exciting to see new companies, and I actually want to give a special shout out to Wireless Field Day delegate Jennifer Huber, who is my favorite Spot the AP player. It sounds like Ventev is going to make your job a whole lot harder. So you guys were thoroughly impressed with Ventev. The tweets that were going back and forth, I saw a lot of good conversation. Steve, I'm going to pick on you again because you're the new guy. What were your thoughts on Ventev real quick?
Really impressed. I mean, their handrail solution with the 2 AP, 2 antenna setup, and that's an easy AP to spot with the logo right on the side. The in-wall triple gang antenna, you can see that, lots of applications, conference rooms, classrooms, and then all their power solutions too, just really impressive. And what I liked about their presentation was they covered, charge times and run times and things like that. They've covered all that.
Yeah. Raul, you work in higher ed, and I know that college kids, given 35 seconds of inactivity, will destroy anything that's attached to a wall that looks like a computer. What excited you about Ventev's solutions for hiding the antennas?
I think it eliminates the monkey bar where the students try to hang off the AP. This way they can't see it. Just looks like that panel right there. We don't know if that's an antenna or not, but I see a lot of use cases in our environment where we will have to use this because a lot of the architects there don't plan for access point installations, and even if they do plan for it, they want it to look very pretty because in our environment, they view it as ruining the design of their, their building. But I can see a lot of use cases, especially for the outdoor antennas, because there's going to be some outdoor requirements, and I think for Ventev to be very into that space, it makes me pretty happy.
Who else has some thoughts? Sam, I know you have some.
I always have thoughts. The reality is that antennas and accessories can be boring. Ventev has enough unique solutions to spend. How long did it talk to us? About an hour or so?
It was actually almost 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours, and they had a comprehensive look at accessories and antennas, and that's a lot of content to go through. And exciting or not, there's just a whole other side to Wi-Fi that just simply goes ignored most of the time, and that's everything that goes beyond what the manufacturer is going to skew up and sell to you.
Eddie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it was what Sam said, right? So it's one of those topics that kind of gets maybe underplayed and maybe people don't have immediate interest in, right? Because they're just, like for me, for example, 90% of our installs are really these types of environments, and we're usually putting in just enclosed, APs with internal antennas, and we don't really think about it. And every now and then I have to use an external antenna, but so it was refreshing to get to look at something that I thought would be, I don't know how interesting it'll be to it. Wow, this is not only is it very interesting, but it's opening my mind to all the possibilities. Because like Raul was saying in the higher ed environment, right? For him, it's like it's getting rid of that handrail, right? It's more about protecting the APs. But what I was seeing here was like, wow, look at all the opportunities to be able to put Wi-Fi in places where I didn't think we could put Wi-Fi for a lot of reasons, either because of power or because of just aesthetics, right? I don't want an ugly AP hanging off of my beautiful lamppost in our beautiful mall, and they've found a lot of ways to get around those issues. And to me, that was exciting because, as a VAR, right, that's money in the bank. If we can figure out a way to sell these APs where a customer is willing to take that on because it's not going to ruin their aesthetic, that's a great thing.
Andrew, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, a couple quick thoughts. Number one, how many times do we say in the Wi-Fi space as professionals that people should probably be using external antennas more? I'm a big advocate for external antennas. Fit the right coverage area for what you're trying to serve, and I think this pushes the ball in that making it easier to use and deploy to use those external antennas rather than just go with the stock Omnis built in. Number two, it could simplify a lot of professionals' life when we get into those corner cases where I've got to come up with a custom solution. I don't know how many times I've come up with custom solutions and you're sitting here going, I'm trying to manufacture something myself to get around an issue I have. I see tons of applicable use cases for some of their enclosures, especially in warehouse and industrial. And then third, we're finding Wi-Fi in a lot of non-traditional places that it's never been in before, like the city, smart city areas and the outdoor areas, and all the cool enclosures they had for bollards and light posts and things like that. I think will go a long way to really easing the adoption and deployment of Wi-Fi in those non-traditional spaces.
Well, I want to pick up on something that I've heard a little bit about architecture and design and aesthetic, and it actually goes to something that Blake had said earlier on Twitter about getting Wi-Fi engineers integrated into the design process earlier, because now I don't have to worry about that big bulbous AP hanging off the wall. Blake, do you want to expand on those thoughts just a little bit?
Well, I think it's the same reason why, like Keith, you've seen uptick in the Ekahau training from Bixie people. We want to get our cable pullers more up to speed on the basics of RF and basics of designs, and we've had a lot of RCDDs in that training just to figure it out. I think there's also importance for us to go into the architecture side of it to, if we're going to do these light bollards or we're going to do something that requires embedded in concrete, we've got to be involved up front because we need to put those vaults in the concrete to be able to put access points, to be able to run all the cables and everything. And the only way for us to do this is if we get involved up front. A lot of people will say, well, there's no way we could ever be involved that early on. You certainly can be involved that early on. If you're corporate America and you are building a building, your IT staff knows you're building a building. Get involved with it. If you guys are building a new dorm hall or something.
If I see a new building, I'm contacting someone.
Yeah, you look to see who is contacting. It's up to us to get involved, to find the right people. And then as partners or as VARs, that's up to your account manager to have that tight relationship with the customer to be able to add that value.
Given how horribly we know that what happens when the architects and the GCs get involved in the computer IT part of it late in the process, I would much rather see us getting involved earlier in the process. Drew, what were your thoughts?
So I've started doing that locally down in South Texas, and we've got a couple of buildings that we were able to sit down with the engineering firms actually when they were drawing up the plans for it and say placement, and then go back to the GC or the architect and figure out how to place it in that area based on the design that we had put together just from the CAD. So it's meetings like that. I couldn't encourage you guys enough to get involved with them. We've got a couple of shopping centers that are going up where we were able to sit down with the architect and understand where we were going to place the technology in the light poles and in the different parts of the structure, because I really can't impress upon you guys enough how easy it is to do it. And what will happen is you'll end up seeing in the engineering firm and saying, hey guys, let's start thinking about this now, and they will appreciate you for it. It makes it easier for everyone from an estimating perspective of how much money they're going to spend on IT to you understanding where your equipment goes, and then also them understanding what they can do with it. I think it's really important. The other thing that they talked about right at the end was I really want to applaud them for putting together their rapid Wi-Fi deployment kit. And I get in weird situations where I've got to deploy Wi-Fi. One of my articles on the blog that's been retweeted over and over and over again is when Enrique Iglesias came to town. And he came to town and played a concert, and the production manager walked out onto the field of the stadium. He says, what's your Wi-Fi password? And they said, there's no Wi-Fi. And he said, we don't take the stage until there's Wi-Fi here. And he walked off. And I got a phone call on a Wednesday saying, we have to have Wi-Fi in here by Saturday for the stadium, or else Enrique Iglesias is going to take the stage. This is not I'm not joking. This is really what happened. And so we went out there and we had to figure out a couple different ways to do it. So doing something like rapid deployment, where you've got a battery that you can charge up and then deploy for 10 hours is one thing. But their solar kit is really, I think, phenomenal for what some of the areas that I serve. I serve rural Texas, and there's not a lot of power there. We work with a lot of unincorporated areas, unincorporated county areas where there's a lot of economic disparity. They don't even have streetlights. These are people who are fighting to get streetlights in their neighborhood or get their roads paved. But we've got some county commissioners who really want to provide Wi-Fi to them to help bridge the learning gap there. Being able to provide solar powered connectivity for any type of device, I think gets a huge applause from me. And the price point's right around $3,000 is what it takes. So it's
Jake,
awesome.
what are your last thoughts on this?
I really like the fact that they take a good stance on power. They have very flexible UPS solar design for stuff that has transient power. I like that. I do a lot of outdoor where centrally switched, the lights are on at night and off during the day, and there's no power to the poles. That makes doing like outdoor mesh really tough when you're like, yeah, you only have power half the day, and the times of day when you have power are the times that there aren't people out using Wi-Fi. So I like the fact that they have solutions and kind of have thought through those, and obviously have seen some of those challenges. I also like the fact they talked about it a little bit, that they had a school district that called and said, hey, we need something special. My experience with them has been they're great at doing special, right? You need something custom. I had a customer, they needed enclosures with specific requirements. They needed things like hydrophobic vents and stuff like that. And it was like, yeah, well, they shipped them out. They spec'd it and said, this is where we want everything mounted inside. They just sent that info back and they custom built them. So
cool.
I kind of like that from a ease of deployment, not having to sweat those details. We could have spent a month drilling enclosures and installing all that stuff, and they took very care of us making that kind of custom thing that would normally be kind of prone to issues. So,
well, I think that's really interesting, because when you really think about it, we saw 3 presentations today. We've talked about 4 completely different topics: software, hardware, analytics, and accessories. Every one of the presenters was very impressive. Every one of them talked about something mobility and wireless related that we can all identify with. And I really think that's kind of where this is going. There's a reason why this event's called Mobility Field Day 1, because we wanted to get away from the idea of just access points. There's more to mobility than just wireless signal. And I think that's really kind of what we learned today.